So you're either getting a separation from your long-term partner or you're getting a divorce. But you have assets such as pensions that you need to protect. How do you go about that? Brilliant question. Natalie will give you those answers. Talking about protection of assets and wealth, there is, and we touched upon this earlier about couples separating, Natalie. How on earth does someone protect their pensions if they're going to go through a divorce issue? And again, maybe changing, if you can enter that one as well.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, the idea that people will separate after they've already gone through the emotional turmoil of leaving the country that they've lived in for, many years. It's really, really horrible to think about, and I really hope it doesn't happen. I think that what I say is just something that's, I'd like them just to keep in the back of their mind, really. And, even if it's sort of it happens to a friend of a friend or something, it's just something that they can sort of talk about. But insofar as pensions are concerned, they're really, really tricky assets. The divorce courts in England and Wales, they treat them in a way that they can be split. So in a long marriage, the starting point will be 50-50 division of the assets. Now, without getting too technical, because we'll lose all the audiences, you can split assets in different ways. So you can split it based on the fund value, or you can split it based on what each party would get on their retirement by way of income. So the easiest way to protect your pension and to watch it accrue is to basically each party have your own pension. So be very clear about that. You can both contribute to one another's pension, but make sure that they're both equal and, accrue them that way. In reality, that doesn't happen. We know that. But what interests me is when these people from Hong Kong move over to the UK, they are looking for jobs, a lot of them. They may end up working for organisations such as the NHS, or they may be teachers. I know myself from speaking to a fellow teacher in Hong Kong that she's going to move over and she wants to also be a teacher here in the UK. Teachers' pensions, NHS pensions, they're notoriously great. They're really, really good pensions. So with those, it's a case of, well, how do I protect them in case something bad does happen? So it comes back down to exactly what we discussed before about these contracts or these other documents that you could get prepared by people like me, family solicitors. And in this case, we could have what's called postnuptial agreements. So if they're already married, we could have a postnuptial agreement regulating the assets, including pensions. We could regulate loads of things, specific contributions during the marriage, etc., which means that when or if the relationship did break down, the starting point is we'd be saying, well, we both signed up to this. It says that I should keep my pension, you should keep yours, I should keep my 100,000 that I contributed towards that property. That should be the starting point. The reality is that what I tell clients, and they don't always know, is that they think that these sorts of, I don't know if Hong Kong people are that aware of prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements, but even here in the UK, they're not that popular because I think that some people still think that they're only reserved for the rich and the famous, whereas that's simply not true. If you are going to spend a few £1,000s to essentially try and protect £100,000 plus some pension of £300,000, it is most definitely proportionate and worth doing. So in summary, the way you do it is the easiest, most simplest way is to accrue your own pension, ensure the partners can, contribute to one another's, but also think about these postnuptial agreements. If you're not married yet, prenuptial agreements, and if you're living together, you could have what's called living together agreements as well, which regulate your finances.
Natalie, just a question on that. And I think, Chenji, I want to come to you in a second because I think there is a special thing about pensions as well. But when it comes to people splitting up, we're obviously talking about people who are married. However, I do understand that you could be cohabiting for a period of time, and if you separate, could there still be a challenge on your assets if you let's say you've been cohabiting for 2 years and there's been contributions on both sides, because that's not going to be known in Hong Kong either.
No, really good question. So with cohabitation, there's nothing the idea of a common law wife, that's all a myth. There's no common law wife, etc. The claims in respect of cohabitees or cohabitation, people who live together, that is a lot more complex. They will be making claims under trust law. And let's just say it's a really, really, really complex area of law, but in theory, they can still make claims towards assets that belong in another person's name, but typically it's property. So if I give you an example, under trust law, there may be a partner who, let's say the male partner purchased a property and the female partner lived there. It wasn't in her name. She contributed towards it by way of, they had children and she brought up the children. She may have paid towards a mortgage slightly. They separate. He goes, well, we're not married. The law in respect of the matrimonial clause, that doesn't apply. So actually, you can't have a claim. Technically, she may have a claim under trust law. And it's all about what's called constructive trust, proprietary estoppel, resulting trust, etc. It's all about whether financially does she contribute towards the property, etc. So yes, people who live together can still have claims against the other person regardless of the fact that they're not married. However, it is typically a claim towards things such as property.
And that's good, of course. Going back to pensions, Chenji, I remember when I was doing my training with SJP, and one of the things that we talked about was pensions, and don't get involved in pension splitting because it can be a complete nightmare. From your perspective, what should people think about in Hong Kong, whether that's a Hong Kong pension or indeed a UK pension, and potentially getting split up?
Well, so in the UK, so the UK pension and the Hong Kong pension are actually quite different. So, I want people to kind of, unlearn whatever they've learned about the pension. You think about, I retire at 65, I get an income for the rest of my life or something like this. In the UK, since 2015, it was called, there's a pension freedom was announced, and pension has effectively become a structure, a vehicle, a potentially tax efficient vehicle for you to invest. You can invest in property, commercial property, actually, not residential property. You can invest in traditional stocks and shares, or you can keep cash in there. So inside a pension, any gains are completely free of tax. And when you come to take money from the pension, that's when you become subject to income tax. So that's just kind of like to make it simple to understand. Now, a key benefit of the pension is, we talked a lot about inheritance tax today, actually, earlier on, and a benefit of the pension, which is why we do, myself as a professional financial advisor, we do like to use pensions, because a pension does not fall into your estate, which means it's outside of your estate and therefore not subject to inheritance tax. So it is a very incredibly valuable tool for this. And, in terms of the question for couples, and pension assets, now actually, this is something we actually work extensively with solicitors on, because sometimes, giving a bit more of your pension is beneficial. And sometimes, with different scenarios, giving less of your pension away is beneficial. So there's quite a few sort of nuances in terms of how UK pensions work, which are very, very different how they work in Hong Kong. And so that's something, again, please have a Google, please just, research on this subject. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions. I think, Simon, you mentioned Hong Kong pensions too.
Indeed, I did, yes.
Yeah. So I think, what's in many, Hong Kong BNO clients of mine, and I started working with a few of them, is in Hong Kong, every person has the mandatory provident fund, which is the UK state pension. Now, it is a funded pension, which means you have an allocation of part of the pot. And normally when you reach, I believe, is it 65, you're entitled to take that pension. But there is a provision that says if you do permanently move abroad, you can apply for early release of your entitlement towards that pension. Now, the issue is, since March 2021, so only about 2 months, after this, after the BNO visa was announced, the government said, we cannot accept a BNO passport as a way of proving that you have permanently relocated. So now this has become a big issue. This has become definitely a big issue, and no one knows what this situation will sort of develop to. But I think, this is something that Nigel, Paragon Law are actively monitoring, and there will be ways to potentially have access to that pension, either in 5 or 6 years when you are thinking about applying for indefinite leave to remain or become a UK citizen. But again, yeah, I think it's a very sensitive topic at the moment about the mandatory provident fund.
There are many live events that you can register for free. There are 4 events that's showing: HK to UK to help people move from Hong Kong to the UK, the Property Expert Panel. If you're a property investor and property developer, this will be very useful for you. Tax Q&A, if you want to ask proactive tax questions in regards to structures and how to mitigate tax in the future. And finally, UK tax return Q&A, as it says, to deal with questions in relation to your tax returns before you submit it to HMRC. Don't forget that these events are live and will be shown on YouTube the day after. So why not register today, start saving tax tomorrow?